Hello everybody and welcome to this video at TD channel. Today we're gonna talk about environment variables. This is something that not many users are familiar with. Some people don't even know what they are. Some people kind of know what they are, but they don't really know what part they play in this whole equation of trying to produce CG. So we're gonna go over them because I think it's one of the many tools that a TD should have on its arsenal, so that he can write more efficient code and more efficient tools. So, what are environment variables? Well, if you've done any bit of programming, you probably know what variables are. If you don't, we have a video that covers that also. But as you know, variables are nothing but a name, a symbol that contain a value, which is usually can be text or numbers. So that is a variable. Computer programs have variables, and one of the things that it's really cool, really useful for everyone, is the fact that they can be variables that are part of your system, and they are usually available at the system level or per session. For example, every time you open a new terminal or a new command line terminal, you can create new variables that are alive and are available to just that session, so that when you close the session, they're not part of your system anymore. So you can have them both at the system and at the session level. Something also very important about environment variables is that pretty much every operating system has them. Windows, OS X, back in the day, IRIX, Unix, Ubuntu, all of them pretty much have environment variables because they're so essential, which means that you can leverage, this common mechanism to be able to configure things in a more easier manner. They are usually all uppercase with underscores being used as separators. And the last thing, I guess, that is really important about environment variables is that in most Unix environments, they're accessed with a $sign in front of the name. And in Windows, you have to use these percentage signs, but you have to use one at the front and one at the end so that Windows can interpret that as an environment variables. So why are they important? Well, you can use environment variables to configure system, software, and pipeline. You guys are going to see a little bit of some examples of how that would work, but they're extremely useful for that purpose. They are also important because most CG software, either compositing or 3D application, inherits the environment from the environment variables from the environment of where the application was launched. And a lot of these applications, pretty much, they just give you a method for you to access this environment variable. So they can be very useful all the way inside your application now. And another reason, and I guess one of the final reasons why they're really important, is because they can help you write software that is more flexible. Instead of you having to hard code a value, you can just insert an environment variable, and as long as there's an environment variable set up to handle that, your script can adapt to, you just change the environment variable and the script has a little bit different behavior. So let's move on a little bit and let's look at what I meant by system configuration. Most operating systems have an environment variable called path, capital P-A-T-H. And basically, whenever you try to run an application or a program from the command line or from the terminal, what the OS is going to do is it's going to go search in this path environment variable for the command that you typed in. Let's take a look at how this would work. So here I have a shell. It's a bash shell. And let's say that I want to create a command named foo. So I want to be able to do something like foo and then type enter. As you can see, it's going to tell me that the command was not found. Okay, well, let's go ahead and let's look at where we are right now. And let's create a new file. So we're going to do foo.py. Right? So this is going to be foo.py, and we're going to type in here just very simple. We're going to do print foo right? So that's going to be our script. So we're just let's just call it foo, and then we can quit out of this. We can see that we have our file foo over here, and if we actually, let's go and change it a little bit more. Let's do edit foo. So what we're going to do is here we're going to use this line, which is very common in Linux to use. User bin environment Python. Right? So right now, basically what that line does, and let's look at it again. And you guys see me, I'm typing E here, foo. Actually, what I'm typing behind the scenes is just an alias. I'm using Vim, which is a text editor that is very popular in Unix systems. And what this line does is it tells the system, hey, whatever's coming after this line, it's actually some code that you can evaluate using this command right here. So the command is user bin environment. An environment is a utility application that just finds where in the system an application lives. So environment is going to go and find Python, and Python is going to be in charge of running whatever is down here. This is a simple Python command, so all we're doing is printing. So we can exit out of this, and now we're going to change the permissions for that file. So we're going to do chmod 777, which means anyone can read, write, and execute this file, and this turns it into an executable file. So foo, and now if I do this foo, it works. It printed foo for us, right? So, but what happens if I open a new location, and I'm in that same location, users foo? But what happens if I move to, let's see, downloads, and I type foo command not found? What if I type dot and slash and foo? It's not found. So that's because that particular, the system doesn't know where to find foo. It doesn't know of its existence. It looked in very specific places for that, and this is where it looked for. So I'm going to do echo path. So this is the path. These are the different directories where the command shell, the operating system, is going to go and look for the application that you're trying to run. It's going to look on this location, and then every time you see a colon, that means that's a new location, right? So it's going to look into all these places, but of course the directory where we were, which was this one right here, users Rudy, is not going to be able to find it because that is nowhere in here. So before we can run it, we would have to put it in there. So this is what we can do. And actually, let me make this text a little bit bigger. We're going to go here and we're going to set the value of path. Now, path is extremely important variable, so you have to be very careful not to break everything, basically. So we're going to do, and this is, I'm using a bash shell, so this is the command for doing this. Export path, and you can notice I'm not putting the dollar in front, because as soon as you put the dollar in front, it tries to expand the value. So I'm going to do path is equals to path, and then colon, and then I'm going to put users Rudy. Right? So basically we have added users Rudy into the path. So as soon as I do that, and if I type foo now, the system will find it. But here's the tricky part. If I start a new shell, I'll make this a little bigger, and I type foo here, it's not there because you will see here that this shell, let's look at the difference between these two shells. If I do echo path, it returns all this, and then at the end, all the way down here, we have users Rudy, which is what we did when we ran this line right here. We appended users Rudy to the value of path. If we look at this file over here, at this shell, and we do echo path, you see that value is not there. The value users Rudy was added here and it only affects this terminal right here, this session. You can see that this value over here actually matches the original value from over there. So that's one way that you can use the environment variables so that your system can find stuff faster. This is one of the reasons why a lot of people will do something like they will set their own home folder. They will have a specific folder called bin where they can put their scripts, and then they'll map that into paths so they can run their own scripts. And they usually put it all the way at the end to make sure that they're not overriding some previous values. So that's how path works, as you could clearly see. So let's go back into our presentation and see what else could we do with this. Other very common system or environment variables are the values home, which is usually the user directory, the value user, which is usually the name of the current user, and that's the name that you use to log into the computer, and host name, which is usually the name of the machine inside the current network or the current domain where you're working. So, as I said earlier, environment variables are also used for configuring software. So for example, certain applications like Maya, what they do is to give the user a lot more flexibility. They allow you to specify the different locations where a plugin might live, or the different locations where a script might live. This way, users can manage their assets a little bit better instead of having to move all the information into a single folder. And this is how some software used to work before. You would have a single folder for plugins, and if you wanted to install a plugin, you had to put it in that folder. Well, this creates a little bit of mayhem, because usually what you want is you want to keep the core of the application just as is, with very little human interaction. Leave it in its original location, untouched, and then you want to append to it, because as soon as you start tinkering with the original installation, it could be very easy for you to pretty much break the configuration. So this is a better way of doing it, in my opinion. And Maya provides different environment variables for you to be able to add your own stuff. One of them, for example, is Maya plugin path, which is a collection of paths where Maya is going to look for plugins. The same thing for script path, but this is for finding scripts. LM license file is the location where it's going to go and find the license for Maya. Houdini, for example, Houdini uses different sets of environment variables. One very popular one is Houdini OTL path, and that is the location where you would save your operator type libraries. This is something that you guys will probably learn in some of the other videos. And you can also put there's another one called Houdini path, which is where you can put different kinds of scripts or different kind of initialization or configuration files for the application. Now, I also mentioned that environment variables can be used to configure a pipeline. So how could it be used? Well, from experience in working on different studios, a lot of them use environment variables such as department, show, sequence, shot, and all of these environment variables can be used to configure just your system, the software configuration, output directories, plugin paths, all kinds of values. And it actually puts you in a contextual environment, so that when you start Maya, but before you started Maya, you set up your department, your show, your sequence, and your shot, then Maya knows a lot of what you're trying to do, and it could really simplify things for you. Like it knows what you're working on, so it knows where the output should go. So you don't have to worry about setting the output folder or setting it to the wrong folder or something. For example, it knows where you're supposed to save the file, because it already knows what you're working on. So we can see an example down here. Let's see, we have an environment variable called show, and it's been set to project/show. Show 1. And then you have the environment variable Maya script path. Well, Maya script path is being set right now to /studio scripts. So this would be all the scripts that are part of the studio. And, this is stuff that is just shared among all the different shows. And then the next value where it's going to go look for scripts is in show/shared Maya scripts. So what this means is that it'll first load a whole bunch of studio scripts, and then it's going to load the local scripts for the current show. If for some reason you're creating a script that has the same name as a script in the studio scripts, that would override its value, and basically what that means is you're telling the pipeline or the system, I know that there is a file that belongs to the studio level, but for this particular show we have decided to use a different kind of behavior, and we want to override that. And the next line down is same example but for plugins. So very, very fast, I think you can see how powerful this could be in case that you're working on one project and then you get to a point where everything is running smooth and you don't want to mess with the configuration of that project, but then a new project starts and you decide, hey, for this project maybe we want to use a new set of scripts, we want to use a new function call that was introduced into the Maya API. So you can do that. Basically you will have two different source trees, and they're not going to be cross-contaminating each other, and you can work more confidently knowing that you're not going to break another show. One of the last things that I mentioned was that environment variables can be used for software and script flexibility. So for example, you could use the values user and hostname to create like necessary log data. This is very common, for instance, if you're working in a script that will allow users to publish meshes into the pipeline. You could very easily use the username and the hostname and do a date lookup so that you can store a log entry that says user whatever exported this file from this machine on this day. So now there's very clear track of where stuff's coming from, and that's a very important thing in pipelines, to be able to track who did what and where it's coming from, so that you have a good picture of where your assets are. You can also use environment variables to read configuration data, and this is a more common way of working now. You'll have an environment variable called showConfig, for instance, and all you have to do is point that to a file, and that file could be a JSON file that has a whole bunch of settings. And we have other videos that cover JSON, so you're welcome to go see those. And this way, basically, every show can have their own configuration file, and the script would adapt really fast because it doesn't need to know where that configuration lives. All it needs to do is find the environment variable showConfig, and that's very easy to set. So the last thing we're going to cover is how to set permanent variables. As you saw earlier in a little demo, when I opened a new shell, the path environment variable had not been updated to contain the last folder that we added to the path. So how can you set environment variables so that they're permanent, so they're always there? Well, let's give that a look. So before I continue, I'm going to go ahead and remove this file called foo because I have no use for it. So usually the way things work, and let me go over here, under Unix, depending on which terminal you're using, you're going to have a file called .bashrc, either that or .profile or .rclogin, and these are files that are read in sequence. Like if you're using Bash will load several files, and then at the end is going to go into the user's home directory, and then it's going to look for a file called .bashrc. Under Windows is a little bit different. You can do it through system properties or through a bat file, and we'll cover Windows later. But right now let's look at how that works. So if I go into my home directory and I do ls.bashrc, you see I do have that file, and if I bring it up in my editor, actually this one's empty because I think the one I use is this one. Right, so you can see this file right here has a whole bunch of different configuration settings that I like to use for myself. So whenever you see this word export, and then you see the name, and then you see equals, and then a value, and remember this equals, there can't be any spaces here, and the value, that means that you're creating a new environment variable. So by simply editing this file, which is called .bash_profile for my system, I'm creating new environment variables. So for instance, here I created path. I made it, I set it to this value. And then down here, I edited path again, and I just put path here in front, and I put here my Qt libraries. If I wanted to expand this path to include my user location, I can just do this. And now here you're going to see a little bit of a difference. So now that I save this, I'm going to exit. And if I go ahead and I do echo path, you see users is not here at the end because this shell already started, and that file .bash_profile is only read or sourced when a new shell is starting. So if I go here and I do new to open a new shell, let's make this a little bit bigger, and I do echo path, you're going to see users Rudy is at the end. So I just modified permanently because I can keep opening tabs. Like if I open a new tab, and this would be a new shell, and no matter how many I open, this has been added permanently, right? So whenever you set the value in one of your logon files, like I said, in Unix they're usually bashrc, also bash_profile, the profile, and that's something that you're going to have to read in documentation of your OS. As long as you put it in there with values similar to this, export value equals, and then whatever value you want to give it. For path is usually a colon separated list of paths. So as long as you do that, you are indeed affecting the permanent environment variables. So if I close this, another question might arise, like, okay, so what if I want to update this value without having to start a new window? Well, what you would do is very simple. You just go source, and then you give it bash profile. So now that you source it, if I echo path again, now you're going to see that my name has added at the end. However, because I sourced it, this path probably got a little bit bigger. Yeah, there you go. It got a little bit bigger because it added to path. Path was already set over here, and then we ran it again, and then it basically added itself to itself. So basically, now path is a little bit polluted right now, that environment variable. But if I start a new tab and I echo it again, you'll see it's again the simple one. So that's how you set up environment variables under Unix systems. Let's take a look now at how you do it under Windows systems. In the previous video, we demonstrated how to do everything inside of OS X, which pretty much replicates a Unix environment, a Linux environment. And right now we're going to show how to do this in Windows. So in Windows, there's just like in OS X, there's different places where you can create your environment variable. The most common one that probably most people know about is by going to Start menu, Computer, making a right click, and go to Properties. So this will bring you to one of these windows right here. And if you click here on the left on Advanced System Settings, you'll get this window. And right here at the bottom, you'll see Environment Variables. So you can click in here, and this will allow you to define environment variables that are specific for just a user, or environment variables that are system-wide, basically that affect every single user. For the time being, let's go ahead and try to create an environment variable just for Rudy, which is the current user. So you can go ahead and click New, and let's give this value of foo1, and the return value is going to be bar1. Okay, so that was pretty straightforward. And you can go ahead now and start a command by going right here and clicking on Command Prompt. So this is going to start this, and now I should be able to do here echo foo1, and this should return, oops, sorry. Well, let's make sure that this was set properly, that I did, yeah, foo1. Oh, I'm sorry. To be able, before this takes effect, you actually have to click OK. So that's gonna save the changes. So now I should be able to go over here and do echo foo1. And you see the return value is bar1. So this is not too useful right now, but there's a bunch of environment variables that you could create. So for example, if I go here and let's go ahead and delete that one. And let's do a new environment variable, and let's call this one called show. And you show, let's say you're working on a show called Gladiators, and the folder in directory is going to be called glad. So you can do something like that, right? And actually, chances are you might have to give it a full location. So, but actually, no, let's just go ahead and leave it there. So if you go ahead and do OK, now, you guys remember I launched this shell before I did any of the changes. So this shell still remembers foo1. It will not know about the existence of show. It doesn't know what that is. And if we go here in environment variable, actually it's capital. So let's try that again. Echo show. And you see it doesn't know what it means. Now if I open a new shell, and on this one I try echo show, it's gonna know that it is glad. So inside your scripts, you could write inside your script something that uses this environment variable to know where to find things, and I think we explained that on the previous in the previous video. So as you saw, environment variables are set kind of per session. So this session and this session, they're very different because I launched them before or after saving. Like if I go here and I do echo foo1, it's not going to know what it is because we deleted it and then we saved. So that's one way to create environment variables here through show. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to go ahead and accept this. Another way to do environment variables is by using the set command. So let's say you wanted to create an environment variable called shot, and shot is equals to 0.5.0, right? So that's the value of shot. So you can do this, and now if you do echo shot, is going to give you that value. Now, as I mentioned earlier, environment variables that you set through set only work in the current shell. So if I go here and start another one, and I try to echo shot, it doesn't know what it means. So this is all nice and dandy. The only problem that we have right now is that when you add environment variables through this location, you're pretty much creating them in a very static way. So let's say that you're working here and you're working on one show, and then you want to work in a different project. Maybe you'll have a command that will allow you to set up a whole bunch of environment variables that are going to be very useful for your production, resolution, package version number, all kinds of stuff. You won't be able to do that through this location because these are set very statically. You can't change them on the fly. And you could have like a bat file or an executable file to change things here on the fly. Like for instance, right now if you go here and I do echo show, oops, I'm sorry, and I do echo show, you see it's glad, and you could have a bat file that just does set show equals, and let's say you have another show called bar. And now if you go up and you execute echo show again, now it's bar. So I've changed it dynamically. And like I said, you can do it through a bat file. But there's a third way where you can define environment variables so that they show up, when you first start the command line. And that is done through the Registry Editor. So let me go ahead and close this. So if you go here and you type regedit, we'll bring up the Registry Editor. Basically, what you would need to do is to set, let me bring this a little bit lower, to set a file that will run automatically every time you start a shell, and in this file you can set, just bad files or whatever you want, you would have to go here. So you start your registry editor. You're going to have all of these different locations like current user, local machine. So usually local machines is going to affect everyone. So you're going to go into local machine software, and then you're going to go down, find Microsoft, and inside Microsoft there's going to be a folder called command, let's see where it is, command processor. So what I did here is, let me go ahead and delete this. What I did here, I'm sorry, well, once you go inside command processor, and you can see here the path here, local keys, software, Microsoft command processor, I made a right click and I said new string value, and I gave this a value of auto run. And then when you double click on it, it's going to tell you, okay, what do you want me to auto run? So usually what you can do is put in here an environment variable called user profile, which usually points to your home. So if I go over here and I type set and I hit enter, these are all the environment variables that are currently set for this shell. And you're going to see here at the bottom that says user profile is C users root, which is usually where you store all of your personal files, your home location. So you can do user profile and then /.profile. That's all. So now you can go ahead and save this. What does this mean now? It means that if you go to your home location, you can now create a file called .profile.bat, which is this file right here, and I'm going to go ahead and edit it. So right now, under .profile.bat, I have this environment variable called a Python path, but I can do also set show equals foo, and then set shot equals 0.01.0. Right? So I can save this, close this file. So basically this .bat file, and it's called .profile.bat. Like if you go here and you do dir.bat, you'll see it's actually called .profile.bat. Over here we didn't have to give it the extension because when Windows finds a file and it's going to try to execute it based on its extension. And since it knows that the extension is .bat, then it's going to run it. But you can always go here, double click just to be safe, and do .bat. So now that that is set up, we can go ahead and close this. And I'm going to go ahead and open one more shell. Let me go ahead and close this one. And if you run this shell, now we can do echo show. And this one remembers that show is foo, while this one still thinks that it's bar. If you go up and you change this to shot, this one thinks that shot is 0.5, and this one thinks that shot, oops, sorry, I forgot the last one. And this one thinks that shot is 0.1. So what this allows you to do is now you can very easily write a Python script or something that will modify the content of this .profile file because it's just a string file, as I showed you right here. So you can write a Python script that can overwrite any of these things and, change your environment on the fly so that next time you start a shell, it knows what environment variables it needs to set up. So there you have it. Those are pretty much the 3 ways you can set environment variables in Windows. You can get familiarized, and this last method, the one that we did with the auto run mechanism on the Registry Editor, that's a more advanced one, but it is pretty useful, and probably we're going to have some other videos that are going to show you how to create scripts that allow you to set your environment variables and switch from one environment, from one production environment to another. This video is here for reference because I showed how to do this in OS X and I didn't show how to do it in Windows. So I hope this was easy to follow. Give it a try, and if you can't get it to work, just let me know through the Q&A module in our website, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you very much. See you later.